Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Board meeting of Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome. We do have a new member this evening who's joining us for the first time. Was just appointed as an alternate member of the Planning Board. Did you want to introduce yourself? Or
Yeah, my name is Sam Terrell. I moved to Litchfield about 1 year ago, and I'm just happy to be here on the board.
Well, we're glad to have you on board, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Thank you.
So I'm going to actually appoint you this evening as an alternate because one of our members is not going to be present this evening. Mr. Buffetti is not going to be here this evening. So I'm going to ask that you be appointed as an alternate in his place.
Before we do that,
Voting.
have you been sworn in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Just
think
had to
he
double
has.
check.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. You have been sworn in, so
Yeah.
excellent.
Thank you.
All right, no problem. Okay, so with that said, I will do the roll call of members. Michael Croto, Chair.
Kate Stevens, Vice Chair.
Ron Stevens, member.
Kimberly Queenan, Selectman's Rep.
Curtis Sampson, member.
Sam Terrell, alternate member.
Okay, thank you. Before we begin, just a public input on non-agenda items. Are there any items on the agenda for this evening, not on the agenda for this evening, any input that public has on any non-public items this evening? Okay, hearing none, I will close public input on non-agenda items. And we will begin tonight with the one and only project before us, Mel's Funway Park, 443 and 454 Charles Bancroft Highway, Tax Map 20, lots 14 and 17. Owners Whitney Realty Trust and KBT Realty Trust. Site plan amendment to propose adding 58 parking places in 3 locations, add stormwater drainage, a winter light show along the existing trails where the haunted hayride currently lies, an outdoor laser tag arena throughout the woods where the haunted hayride currently lies, and a Christmas tree sales area adjacent to the arcade building. For a more detailed view of all that is proposed on site, please see the site plan entitled Mel's Funway Plan Amendment. And also floodplain ordinance section 1102.00 permitted uses and 1103.00 special exceptions.
That's not for this,
Is that for something
Number 2,
else?
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. So skip that, and I'll allow the applicants to introduce themselves to the board.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. My name is Andy Perlman, attorney with Prudient and Perlman of Nashua. At the table with me is Pete Madsen of Keach Nordstrom Associates. Also from Keach Nordstrom with us tonight is Matt Peterson, and our heroic owners of the Mel's project is Mike Acamando and Wayne Caulfield with us tonight as well. Mr. Chairman, by agreement, we are going to address the first 4 proposals as shown in note 1 of our plan set. And to just summarize, they all deal with parking. And then hopefully, if all goes well, next month we will be back to you to address the second 4 proposed amendments to the site plan in note 1, having to do with the actual features of the park that we're proposing for this plan. And with that, we'll take any we'll take any questions along the way. And Pete is going to kind of break down each of the 4 parking issues that are before the board tonight, and we can take it from there.
Okay, sounds good. So
Great.
Take it away.
Andy. Thank you, Andy. Pete Madsen, KNA. I'm just going to run through this quick. I know everyone's familiar with the project. A lot of you guys were on the site walk a couple of weekends ago, so you got a good chance to see everything out there. Today, we're going to be talking about the paved parking lot expansion on map 20, lot 17, which is this guy right here. We're also going to be talking about the overflow parking right here, which will remain grassed. We're going to be talking about the corporate event parking right here, which will also be grassed, and the parking on the other side of the street, map 20, lot 14, which is cornfield, will remain a cornfield throughout the fall season until it needs to be used for Spooky World events and Spooky World events only. Let's see here. I wanted to highlight a couple things that were brought up at the site walk. Specifically, the pedestrian access around the site was a big concern. I know Jay had a concern about that as well. So what we've done here is we've added a connection between these two pathways here. We've also added this stone dust pathway behind to kind of get people coming to the corporate events and anyone parking in the overflow parking, get them onto this pathway and bring them around entering the site. That way they're not trudging across the parking lot. No worries about that. And additionally, we have also proposed a couple pavement markings, slow pavement markings on the pavement along here, some in here as well. There's also two signs, two 5-mile-an-hour speed limit signs right on the entrance. I know a concern was people driving too fast through the site possibly, so we feel that this will really remediate some of those issues. And I also would like to mention during the Winter Light Show, people will be coming through the hayride here, and I've just added this note marking here to kind of block off these 3 parking spaces as they're not being used. This will be kind of the main drive exit to the light show here. Additionally, I added another slow pavement marking there, and that pretty much covers the improvements since the site walk. So I'd like to kind of turn it over to Andy if he has anything else. Otherwise, I'd love to hear some questions.
Well, do you want to speak more on the each of the A through D?
Sure, I could do that. So the A here, the first one is the parking lot, paved parking expansion on map 20, lot 17. We're proposing this to be constructed in 3 phases. The first phase being that crescent section there. Phase 2 being the next couple 15 spaces, and the final phase being the last 33 spaces.
do we have the map? Can we take a look at the, you have the drawing? Or a copy of them?
This is the one previously submitted, so it won't have necessarily some of the improvements that we're talking on tonight, but
Okay.
it will be able to show you the main area.
Yeah, the overview is probably best for this. So this parking is the permanent parking proposed here. It's going to be all paved, all striped, and it will include the stormwater management features for obviously the increase in impervious area. The second area of parking that we're proposing is the overflow parking, which is approximately 35 spaces. That's this area right here next to pavilion number 1. This will be used for overflow for Mel's customers during the spring and summer seasons. And now we'll go on to the third area of parking, which is the corporate event parking. This is approximately 70 spaces, and it's the dash line there in between the 2 pavilions. This will also, like the overflow parking I just mentioned, will be grass as well, and it will only be used for corporate events, so large functions, birthdays, corporate events, company outings, that kind of thing. And like I said, only going to be used for those. They'll be set up in advance with the owners, and you're not going to have regular Mel's patrons parking out there. And finally, the last area of parking If you go to sheet 6 on the computer there, it's probably best. This is the parking across the street on map 20, lot 14. This is proposed overflow parking to be used for Spooky World events. This is currently used as a cornfield, and it will be corn will be harvested. It will be rolled, flattened, cleaned up for people to park. It's going to be similar to how, if anyone's been to Spooky World before, similar to how the parking is done on map 20, lot 17. It's going to be a very similar use to that, only used for Spooky World events. We've coordinated with Litchfield Police to make sure that we have a detail for anyone crossing the street there. You can see there's a proposed stone dust walkway, which goes across, which will direct people across Charles Bancroft. There'll be a police officer guiding people back and forth. And like I said, only going to be used for Spooky World events. Anything else, Andy?
We, Mr. Chairman, I provided the board a letter earlier today. With that letter was the DOT driveway permit for this particular lot up on the screen now, lot 14. And that DOT driveway permit, one of the conditions was that we have a police detail as part of the use of the site for the events. It's on the second page of the DOT permit. In addition, this lot 14 is exclusively for Spooky World employees and some overflow parking for the Spooky World events. And it's just like what we had on the sand lot, lot 18. It's exactly the same with two exceptions. It's a smaller lot, so we're going to have roughly 100 cars less than what we had at the sand lot, lot 18. And unlike lot 18 that Mike and Wayne did not own, they actually own this parcel. They rented the other parking rights for the past few years, and this time they don't have to rent; they own it outright through their Whitney Realty Trust as the owner of the property. So it's just like what we did, just like what you folks approved before. We're doing the same thing, but just on a smaller scale, and we own the lot. The other parking, A through C, on note 1, it's all. Remember on our site walk, we talked about the 3 seasons of Mel's. We have Mel's spring and summer season. We have Spooky World, and we have the Christmas season. The all the parking that Pete talked about is all designed Mel's spring and summer season. It is not for Spooky World because the guests are going to be out walking in that area for Spooky World, and it's not for the Christmas season because that's where the cars are going to queue for the Christmas light show. And while the Christmas light show is, that is up for our next meeting, perhaps you can talk a minute about how the queuing is going to work in that new.
Talks about the approximate location of queuing lines for the winter light show. These are going to be demarcated by cones or ropes or something like that. The owners will have flaggers out there directing traffic. There's basically going to be 3 lanes right there, and they'll go all the way back onto the paved parking lot. So where that striping is, that'll no longer be used for parking cars in the conventional method as it was for the spring and summer events. And they're going to be queued, basically continuing that dashed line down like that. They'll also be queued back up the drive aisle towards the crescent, as we're calling it. And then they'll progress through the site. If you go to sheet 5, you can see the kind of continuation of the queue decorated with the Christmas lights. You'll make your way through the light show, out at the end of the winter light show. Keep going. And you're going to make a right there, not to go down the wetland path. And you're going to come out right there. You'll be directed down. There'll either be signage or flaggers out there directing people. And you can stop and get a Christmas tree or stop by the fire, warm up, get some hot chocolate, go see Santa, and then continue on your way and come out the main entrance of Mel's. You got anything else, Andy?
No, I think we're open for questions, Mr. Chair, and
Okay.
so we want to talk about the parking.
Yes, all right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Are flaggers going to be required for that? I'm concerned about constant flow of traffic driving through that parking lot, and you're asking people to park there, walk against the flow of traffic to get to Christmas trees, hot chocolate, and all of that. And so that constant flow is in between where people are trying to back out. So how are you looking to manage that? Is it all based on people flagging the cars?
I think we could definitely do all flaggers there. I think
Yeah.
that makes sense. I don't know if signage would necessarily be the most clear there, so I think all flaggers there is probably the best way to address that.
Have
Can
you looked?
I,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to mark up the plan right in the middle of a meeting, which I know our engineers hate. But it's hard to see here. So Pete had marked off these 3 spots, not to be used during the Christmas show. But I got to tell you, I don't like these spots, these parking spaces, because if where cars are coming out and they're looking to exit, and these folks are backing out right here, we're going to have a conflict. So can you get rid of these just for the Christmas season?
Absolutely.
Well, isn't it past that entire way?
Well,
the
but
outlets are-
it opens up past this handicap and this open
Mhm.
space. It opens up a little bit.
Okay.
So it's wider. This is kind of a pinch point right here. And, cars backing out right here with a Christmas tree in the trunk.
Right.
They're not going to see people coming. So I think it makes sense to get, just for the Christmas season, get rid of these spaces right there.
And then
Where-
have flaggers stopping traffic. So,
Yeah.
when they see reverse lights or something like
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. I think that makes sense.
Has there been any consideration of adding a walkway on the other? I know there's a walkway towards Charles Bancroft, but a walkway on the other side of the parking lot so that so people don't have to cross that line of traffic in between all the cars.
Right. I don't know. You're saying
Designated place where pedestrians are crossing.
you're
that
saying right
line.
along there where the mouse is. I don't know if there's actually room in there because this is the go-kart area right here.
That's raised up with rocks.
Yeah, this is a rock wall here, so I think there's a pretty significant grade change. I don't know if you'll be able to fit a walkway through there.
Okay.
But don't forget, people will be crossing there because just below their parking lot on the plan will be the Christmas tree sales area.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Where the tree's going to be
Nervous
set up to sell?
By the
Right down this
corporate
way,
In this
this,
area
this
here?
bubble area, yeah.
There you
So
go.
I guess my question is, setting up the trees in this area, you're going to be needing vehicles to be parking in here to be loading the trees up. How congested are you going to get if you're having personal vehicles go down this trail and come out right there? How congested is that going to get when people are coming in? I mean, the tree farms all around here, just trying to get in and out.
Yeah.
People aren't paying attention, and
Yeah,
and
Knowles is a zoo.
that's what I'm saying. And if anybody that's been there, so if you got trees in this area and you've got your flow of traffic, if you're got a good flow, which sounds like you're going to have a nice display, that flow is going to be continuous with people trying to pull in there, load trees. You're going to have a lot of congestion in that area. It's going to back up.
Is there any
No, that's a good comment.
consideration in removing, instead of blocking off those parking spots that you pointed out, but blocking them on the other side and making it can be a lane, like an exit lane, and then it opens
You're
up.
saying like kind of right here and
That's
having them
gonna
go
be
out that
amount
way?
of parking spaces.
That's a possibility, yeah.
Is that zoomed in?
On the go-kart side, right?
What is this right here? Is that
That's just another gravel path through the woods. It's not, I think you guys use it for what, just tracking back and forth or something? Not-
Can you zoom up to where they enter the light exhibit? So you'll be coming in from right here, right?
Yep.
Would it be possible that you add your traffic pattern to come this way and to exit and enter and not have parking up here? And that way, instead of having the flow down here where the Christmas trees are, you have it divided. You'd have entrance and exit right there and have it so it's
The entrance for the light show is in the rear, is it not?
right. And that's what I'm saying. So if you had the entrance and the exit back on the rear, And instead of having any parking in this back area, you would just have it so it would flow. Because maybe some people that are coming to the show don't even want to do trees. And I know that's probably part of the design is to push in that way because you're hoping that they'll stop to buy trees. But what I'm thinking is if you're going to have, can you go back down to the bottom? If you're going to have your traffic flow coming in through there, maybe you guys have done studies on that. I'm not really sure. But if you're going to have your traffic flow coming through here, we all know how tight it is down in this area. If you're going to have people loading trees up here, it's going to get hectic. You're going to have kids running around. I mean, like you said, if you go to Knowles, the kids are everywhere running around, and you're going to have a lot of vehicles moving through here with a lot of foot traffic, and then people are going to want to back their cars up. Nobody's going to want to carry the tree all the way down here. They'll do it, but if you want to try and push those customers, I guess that was.
We could take off, if it's easier, all the spots that face the Christmas tree all the way down. We could get rid of those.
You know,
Yeah, we could go all the way down and get rid of all of that during the Christmas show. And we could obviously put up a better fence, like more of that, like that metal fit-in fence. So there's no way anybody can just run out, into the street at that point in time, because we will still have our flaggers.
Right.
So and we'll also have people that'll be helping, put the trees to the car. That's the part that I think will make it a little bit more special is, instead of somebody dragging them themselves through the parking lot with mom or dad,
Right.
we'll bring it to the car for them.
I mean, that's an option. Yeah.
Because the spot of what you're talking about in the back is you come to an intersection. If you slow it down, if you slide down this way a little bit on the screen.
Up to that top part.
Yeah.
Yep. Right here.
The problem is where the cars would be entering. If I can stand up, I apologize. Michael Ackerman, Mel's from
Yep.
Park. If you brought the cars this way,
Mhm.
now what you do is you have the cars coming and you have them going. So now you have oncoming traffic consistently
Okay.
throughout the whole night, 100% of the time. You would absolutely get a bottleneck at some point here. But if we go back up, if you slide up, if we wipe out all of these going down here,
Yep.
just park here, that would free up. Now, if we run that fence all along here, connecting like the fairground metal fence that slips into shoes,
Yeah.
it would open up all of this area for visibility for our linesmen, for our parkers. It'll be bright. We'll be able to control it a lot more at that point in time there.
I mean, if you have it set up that people can help you load, then it's not, I guess, as big of an issue. The only thing is you got a family of 5 walking down here with traffic coming through. The metal gates will help for sure. But if you got mom and dad carrying the tree and the 3 kids running around, I know in my personal
That's
experience.
what we have to come into. That's the customer service for us.
Yeah.
If anybody's been to Mel's.
Yeah, that's my only concern is that right there with that bottleneck. If people are going to be picking their trees up right there, you got a lot of congestion right there.
Do you know exactly how many flaggers there are going to be in that area?
I mean, we run at, Halloween, we can have anywhere from 10 to 20 people.
Mm.
We'll gauge it the same way, like obviously weeknights, you're not gonna get a lot of people who are gonna come through and, even on the busiest Saturdays from what we hear.
Mhm.
We'll still have probably throughout the whole property, 10 to 12 flaggers around the entire area. And they wear the yellow vests, they all have the big orange cones,
Okay.
or the big orange lights, that are there. And you'll see them, I don't know if anybody's come out to the Halloween event in the parking lot. I think they see the flaggers all over the place. We always make sure that we have more than enough. And if we ever get to a point we don't, what we do is we bring in constant labor. It's an outside company. And every night we always bring in extras because you can never, unfortunately, kids get stuck at sports or something happens. So we always have more than we ever need when it comes to flagging for Halloween. And it'll be the exact same procedure for Christmas as well.
Yeah, because I think with enough flaggers, it could be managed pretty well. So, but I like the idea of opening those spaces up all the way down.
Would you consider blocking the spaces across from the go-karts, like next to the go-karts instead, so there's no crossing of that traffic flow?
We could do that just as easily. Yeah, have the trees park on the side facing the trees, and that way they're just putting it, they don't have to cross. Absolutely. And then the other side, as cars come in, we'll just flatten them a little bit more over to the right. I think that makes actually more sense.
And then, then you could even just have its own flow. I don't know if there's enough room, but just keep, almost leave that.
There's plenty of room there, yeah.
I mean,
Leave
once
that
we stop
outward
parking on
flow
that
up.
side, absolutely, that could be the main drive out, so they're not even near people, at that point.
Mr. Chairman, very good comments. When we come back next time, we get a little bit ahead of ourselves because we're talking about the Christmas light show, but we will come back with a better design here for the exiting of the light show because we don't want that conflict between the Christmas tree sales and the exiting out of the light show.
Do you, does anybody have any more questions? Did you want to talk about the waivers for parking?
Sure.
And traffic?
Yes. Okay, so we have requested 2 waivers for this project. Number 1 being the so from section 120.14 off-street parking of the site plan review regulations. And this is a waiver that has actually been granted before for pretty much the exact same thing, using a cornfield for parking, for overflow parking. This is the overflow parking on the grass area between the kiddie land and the existing pavilion. And this overflow parking is going to be used approximately 30 times per year. And basically, the applicant believes that this would be an unnecessary hardship. They're made to follow this section for the corporate events and overflow parking areas, just due to the limited times per year that it will be anticipated to be used. And as such, the lot 14 is currently used for agricultural purposes and will continue to be used as such during the crop season. So these are all temporary parking areas, not going to be used like the permanent parking area, paved parking area there. So we feel that there's no need to develop these as such and basically put all this impervious area on the site where it's just not going to get as much usage as the other parking area would. And the second waiver that we're asking for is from section 120.11A of the site plan review regulations. That's for the traffic impact study. And basically we feel that the additional uses being proposed here really only the laser tag, the outdoor laser tag arena being the big one added to the summer events, being the bumper boats, the mini golf, the go-karts, the batting cages. That's really not going to bring a whole lot of additional traffic to the site. It's just going to be an additional kind of attraction for people to use. And the other uses being added to the site being the light show and the temporary parking is not it's not being used in conjunction with the summer events. So the traffic will not be comparable in those times.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about the waiver requests? Jay, did you have anything to add to the presentation?
No, overall, I think that we've had a good conversation around the exit from the light show, which has really been one of my biggest concerns. Glad to see that we've also addressed some of the other pedestrian flow in the area. Those were, definitely concerns I shared. With regard to the waivers, as noted, we have previously granted a waiver to allow the use of the cornfield for seasonal parking. From my perspective, that does make sense. It's, less impervious pavement, but also beneficial to keep the cornfield in actual agricultural use. So that certainly seems like a benefit. Hard for me to gauge what kind of usage a laser tag show is going to really generate. So I think I'm deferring to the applicants in their testimony that it isn't going to be a significant addition. That's seems instinctually true, but I have no frame of reference for what a laser tag arena generates in terms of interest or activity.
We see the laser tag as simply another amenity at the park while you're there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you stick around another half an hour, 45 minutes with some friends to do the laser tag. I'm sure some people will come specifically for the laser tag, but that's not the focus. That's not the goal. The goal is to keep people there a little further, a little longer, who are already there.
Okay.
In the past with the crossing compared to the old sandlot across the street to the cornfield, were there used to be lights right in that area, floodlights? So would you have floodlights back where the cornfield is with lighting? I know you're gonna have the police presence, but
Yeah, definitely. There's so throughout the plan, the temporary lights that were there for the past few years are turning into permanent lights. And then on lot 14, there'll be a temporary light, at least one in the parking area. And then there'll be lights at Charles Bancroft Highway with the police department, who really kind of tell us we want the light here, not over here. And then so there'll be, and if you've driven past, there's definitely plenty of illumination as you approach, where the crosswalk's going to be.
I'm looking at Google Earth. So is the cornfield across from this area here?
Yeah, you can actually
Almost at an
see. Yeah,
angle?
you can see the driveway right there.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, all right, that's what I'm looking at then. There is a house directly across from there. The lighting that you're going to put in there, is that going to, have you talked to the residents there? It's
actually owned by them as well.
Okay. Okay.
So we'll evict them if there's an issue.
There are a couple of light areas shown right above you.
Yeah.
Okay. Right here. Right here.
I noticed on the sidewalk, is it up in the back? It seems, is that used for storage? Is that a storage area too in the back of that lot?
Yes, it was.
There seem to be a lot of trucks in the back there. Yeah.
That was on the plans that we came from before, that ends up being storage area. There's some trailers there and some fence there.
Are the vehicles and stuff still there too, or just the picture on the map shows a bunch of automobiles and stuff like that? Is that all gone? It's just
Just tractor trailers that are up that way. That's where we store the off-season and the speakers, props, and all.
Oh, okay.
And that I assume is going to stay where that is not going to move.
Because nobody's parking up that way.
Right.
Okay.
That's
behind
all
the tree.
private.
Correct. It'll be
Okay.
dark,
Okay.
Then we'll have flaggers out there again, and we'll also do what we do with the regular parking lot. That's off that area to just make sure people are going in the direction we want them to go.
And you were talking about a walkway going along. Is it just going to go along that small section on the same side as the cornfield and then cross right there at the entrance, or are you going to cross and then?
Are you talking about on this lot right here?
Yeah, so on this one right here.
Yeah.
Where you're gonna have.
Yeah. You can see right up here. This stone dust walkway.
Okay,
It'll go
so it's not even going along. It's going this way.
Yep.
Straight across. So it's not even.
Yep.
So people aren't going to be walking alongside the road. They're going to be cutting through.
Yes.
Oh. Thank you.
The for the corporate event parking, in your plan, is there, do you have a descriptive narrative regarding the event parking and the food service temporary attraction? Because it looks like that for its intended use.
Are you saying
So for the area that's going to be used during Spooky World versus corporate events during the summertime?
Yeah.
So you is that clarified in your plan? I'm just curious.
I believe it is.
Okay.
Hang on, let me look for a note for it. I believe we do mention the usage of that lot, that parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Note number 17 on sheet 1.
Mhm.
The proposed corporate event parking area between the two pavilions will remain grassed and will only be used as overflow parking for scheduled corporate functions. Additionally, the corporate event parking area will only be utilized during the summer season to avoid conflicts with the previously approved Spooky World food service and temporary attraction area in the same location.
Okay. And recall, did the police department comment on the site plan, or did they? And I believe they probably, from last time, I can't remember. I think there was something, wasn't there? that they
Yeah,
had
that,
sent him a letter or something.
Police department did comment really mainly on the traffic flow between the overflow parking for Spooky World and the main site.
And what about the fire department? Did they make any comments at all? Do we know? Did we get anything from the fire
I
department?
don't remember seeing anything from them, but
I don't recall seeing any comments. from the fire
Okay.
department.
Just in terms of
You
emergency.
can certainly double check, though,
Access.
reach out and make sure.
Okay, all right.
There was a letter from the police department. I don't think I've seen anything from
Yeah.
the fire department. We'll make sure you have both.
Okay, all right. And what about the issue of the, I know there was an issue with the porta potties. Has that been,
there was an area where they had been removed from the plan, which was in conflict with the previously approved site plan. Those have been added back on. They were around, if you're on sheet 4, they were around where it says existing access easement in the left corner there. So those have been added back to the plan set.
okay. And I believe you have, is it, forgive me. What did I see? So you have the New Hampshire DOT driveway permit. That's it. What about AOT and shoreline approvals? Those are still pending. Is that
Yes,
my
those are still
understanding?
pending. We've received review comments and we're in the process of responding.
Okay. Anybody have anything else before I open up to public comment? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, I will open it up to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak regarding the proposed plan? Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Morgan Hollis. I'm an attorney at Gottesman and Hollis, 39 East Pearl Street in Nashua. And I'll try to keep comments to parking because that's what's been presented here this evening. You obviously had my letter, which was dated back in October 5th, and I identified several areas of concern. I'm going to reiterate them because we didn't really go through them at the last meeting.
Did you have an opportunity to see Attorney Perlman's
I
letter?
did.
Okay.
Yes.
Very good.
My first point of the letter was that there really should be a comprehensive review of the entire site. And as I noted in my letter, the planning board has the jurisdiction to review every single use that goes on the property, and it's supposed to review it anew whenever there's a change to a site plan rather than just focus on what the little change is. I pointed out that in 2018, when I started in on this project, the staff had reviewed the proposed site plan for the site and raised concerns as to peak numbers of patrons at Spooky World and Haunted Hayride and parking provisions therefore. And the response was was reference to a letter from Andrew Perlman back in 2018, which said Spooky World's an entirely different, distinct facet of Mel's Park. It is temporarily operating 22 or 24 nights spread out over a 7-week run in late September. This proposed plan indicates that there are significant changes in the operation, and while they might be temporary in nature, some of them are not well defined. We think that there should be a better definition. For example, I was sort of expecting we might hear this evening when they made comments about the overflow parking for summer overflow. How often is that going to occur? Essentially, they're asking the planning board to allow them to park in this space whenever they want to, whenever they deem it's overflow. Could be any time of the year, could be any number of times of the year. And what determines what is overflow? I frankly think that when you're changing a site such that you're allowed to park cars there whenever it's deemed by someone, and I would assume it's the applicant and the owner, that overflow is necessary, that they're going to be able to park there. This could be 10 times a year. It could be 40 times a year. It could be all summer long if it gets busy and they keep finding new things to keep people busy on site. They're going to need more and more and more parking. And this is going to be their go-to parking spot. And why is it that it's not treated as a parking area? Everywhere else, you have parking areas. Now, there's an exception to everywhere else in this town, and that exception is this site. And that's the temporary parking, which used to be across the street, and the temporary seasonal parking for Spooky World, which is on the former DeRocher site. Those are exceptions. Those are unusual. But you now have on site, and they're saying, we think we're going to need overflow. We don't really know. And that's part of the problem with this application, because there never really has been an analysis of what each use on the site might generate for traffic. There's never been a traffic study during the peak summer usage. So nobody on this board, and certainly the public, doesn't really know what that is, what the demand might be. And as they add these new events, I think by all admission, none of us here have any idea. I mean, I think the statement was made by Jay. We don't know what this laser tag might generate. So is it possible that this overflow could become permanent parking? If you don't put a limitation on it, or they don't stipulate to how many times a year, or you don't define what makes overflow, they essentially fill up the parking spaces and then they have a place to park them in the field, and they can continue to do that. They don't need stormwater drainage. They don't need curbing. They don't need striping. They don't need spacing of 20 feet, drive aisles. They don't need anything. They just park whatever they want, whenever they want. Same thing on the corporate events. How many corporate events are they going to have? Should it be limited? Should it be defined? Well, I think that's within your jurisdiction. I think it's your way for anybody to determine whether they're in compliance at any time in the future. If one goes out there and for 100 days, they're parking in these spots, that is a use of property which you're supposed to have control over. It's supposed to be reviewed as a proper site plan requirement. It's supposed to be analyzed as to whether pavement is done properly. Is there curbing? Is the stormwater being caught and retained, or is it just running off the site? Where is it all going? If they're only going 10 times a year, maybe it's okay. Maybe that's okay, and maybe you can waive that requirement. But there's no definition on it, and I just think you have to ask those hard questions. We would ask them. We would expect to be asked. My client owns a golf course. If he starts running events out there and just parking anywhere he wants without lights, somebody's going to say, what's going on? How are they doing this? How can they have all these events all this time and they have temporary lights out there in the field? Nobody cares. Nobody cares where the parking is. That's going to happen in this town. If it happens here, it'll happen elsewhere. So we think there needs to be more attention paid to that. And, my observation remains the same, which is I think you all raised good questions tonight about parking and pedestrian safety. What does that tell you? They didn't really look at this. The applicant has not really done a thorough analysis of these impacts, and nor should you have to do that. You should be able to hire someone to do this. We're not traffic experts. I could sit here just like you and say, well, you know what? I really don't like those 3 parking spaces. I don't like all 18 of them. In fact, I don't like any of those parking spaces. But why? I don't know what the volume of traffic is going to be for this winter light show. Do you want to issue a temporary approval and then come back after it's been out there for a year? I don't think you can do that. Once it's out of the cat's out of the bag, it's out. So I think you owe it to yourself to go out, first of all, make them do what they're supposed to. Do not grant the waiver. The time has come to do a traffic study. We've added, and now we've added some more. And you've got your temporary stretched from October through January. Now that makes up a pretty big chunk. You've added laser tag, which nobody really knows what it's going to be. You've added corporate parking, which indicates they're going to be marketing corporate events out there. They wouldn't be planning for that parking because they never had it before. So when you add 100 parking spaces temporary, you pretty much can tell they're going to be marketing this area as a corporate event. And I think that's wonderful, but make plans for it, folks, because when it happens, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised that there are all these cars parked in a field. It's raining, it's muddy. We don't know where the drainage is going. Where are the bathrooms for all these extra cars and people that are coming? Where are the lights? You know, any other site, you would have a permanent lighting plan. You would have even a temporary lighting. You'd show what are the candle power going off site, who can see it. And that doesn't exist on this plan. And, you know, I think the time has come. They offered to you, they're not in a hurry. And this is the time that everybody should take to analyze it. That's what my letter was about in number one. Number two, my letter was about parking spaces. That comes under the same general analysis. They put out their 58 extra spaces. I think we've just lost a few tonight. Maybe they'll find a way to gain them. Are those parking spaces good? They proposed phasing them. Why do they need 58 spaces? How did they come up with that number? And how do you know that it's even close to what is required under your ordinance? There's no connection in the notes or anywhere else as to this use, this number of spaces. How do they get to, well, we need 58 new spaces and we want to put them on there? What's the methodology? And let's look at where they're putting them, phases 1, 2, and 3. I don't think they're proposing to phase their new improvements 1, 2, and 3. So why should you let them phase the parking 1, 2, and 3? If it's going to be parking, make it parking. If they need it, they're going to need it from the beginning, not from the end. If they're not going to need it, they should tell you and explain why we're phasing this. I don't know that I disagree that it should be phased. But why would it be phased if they're going to be in full swing right away? Why do they need the 58? Who's going to park there for what use? And is that use going to start right away? So again, I think there's not enough information here. We raised it. I was really hoping we might hear something about it, especially since we're just dedicating the parking. But you have just gone through a half hour of some, I don't want to say unprofessional, but non-professional traffic analysis. We are not traffic experts here. You shouldn't be guessing at what's safe in coming out of the light show. They shouldn't be guessing. You shouldn't all be doing this design here at a charrette table. You need some help. They should do the study. You shouldn't grant the waiver. It's that easy. We have time to do it. This is the one time you're going to have somebody look at this, and I think you ought to do it. On number 3, overflow parking on lot 14. Again, it's a parking issue. I made my point, and I think the point is that it's a non-residential use of property, which requires a site plan. They've got a site plan, but it's sort of packed in with the other site plan, and it's only going to be temporary for Spooky World, so let's not really spend a lot of time on this. They've identified 2 temporary lights. Again, no foot candles. What hours are they going to be running? Are they generators? How's the noise going to impact the neighbors? Don't forget, this lot has neighbors. When I started this, I actually represented the immediate neighbor who had concerns about a paintball operation going on, as you may recall. Well, the paintball's not there, but we're getting 150 cars for 6 weeks out of the year. Now, I'm not sure Joanne thinks that's an improvement, but you aren't looking at where they're going to park. You're not looking at, is there screening for when those headlights come and go from 7 p.m. to 12? This is not the sand pit where there's no neighbors. This is a lot with neighbors. Should there be fencing? Should there be screening? We think all of that is what ought to be analyzed on a site plan review of parking. But perhaps the most important thing that we've asked you to decide is it permitted? Does your zoning ordinance permit this? Now, I know that the so-called sand pit lot, which was owned by another party and leased to them, received a ruling from Mr. Bergeron years and years ago when this first started. It was sort of an informal ruling, and I haven't seen any letter, but we know it was approved. So we didn't get a chance. We asked to revisit. It's not going to be revisited. That's the way it was. It was a ruling. I don't see a determination here from anybody, and so therefore you're going to be making the zoning determination if you approve it. Is off-street parking as a use of a property permitted? Because it's certainly not under your zoning ordinance. There is no permitted use of off-street parking for the principal use or even an accessory use of a property. So if you grant this, you are allowing that use. That is a zoning determination. My belief is you might want to ask whoever makes that decision in town to make a zoning determination. Is it or isn't it? Is it lawful or isn't it lawful? And then at least you would not be making that decision. You would have it before you. We don't think it's permitted. We think they should have to go for a variance. They may be entitled to get a variance, and maybe it would be considered a reasonable use, and it's possible. All of these issues about headlights in your backyard, cars late at night, temporary lighting, generators running, all of those things would come out in a zoning hearing if they didn't come out in a site plan review. Now, oftentimes when I go to zoning meetings, I tell the zoning board, those are all going to be taken up at site plan review, which is where they should be taken up. I haven't heard anything about that tonight on this parking lot. I haven't heard a thing. When you come off the road and they have a new driveway there, is there going to be sufficient lighting at that driveway? Yes, there'll be policemen. Yes, there'll be flaggers. But is there going to be sufficient lighting like there should be when you come off to park 150 cars on a crowded Saturday night during the fall with lots of pedestrians walking around? I don't see a light pole there. I don't see a light pole at the entry point. I don't see a light pole at the stone path where they're walking across the street. Again, maybe it's temporary. Maybe that's okay, but it's not on the plan. And that ought to be looked at. Your lighting person ought to look at that. Maybe, these are applicants. You have a right to have people on your team to review it. It shouldn't necessarily be abutters. It should be, I am not a lighting expert, but I've been down this path a lot. I'm not a traffic expert, but I know there are people. I'm not a pedestrian flow. Now's the time to have this looked at. Let's take our time and look at the plan. So that was my comment on lot 14. Parking requirements, I've already made my comment. That was 4. Waiver of traffic impact analysis, I've already made that comment. Pedestrian circulation, same thing. You already heard everybody trying to figure out where are the people going to walk, where are they going to park, where are they going to walk when they go to get the trees, and how's the traffic going to be. This shouldn't be up to us sitting here at this table. You should be able to have someone on your team, and they should pay for that, and they should assist you. Maybe the answer is the same. Maybe we're all pretty good at this because we've been doing it, but this is too big an issue. This is a new cycle of use. It's an expanded use. It's a nighttime use. And I think we've already heard everybody has experienced it at other tree sales, Christmas tree sales sites in town. I think those, I guess, finally, the DOT permit does say police will be required at any event. So if you are going to allow this parking and you're going to approve this plan in some fashion, I think you want to define what that means, because it's not defined in the DOT permit. But as I read it, if you park one car there, you're going to need a police detail because you're only parking there for Spooky World. That's an event. So I just wanted to be clear that the minute that parking field opens, a policeman has to be there. Can't be just like, well, it's going to be a slow night tonight, so we don't need police. It should be whenever that field is used, that driveway is open, there should be a police officer there. On the queuing for going in the light show, I didn't hear any comments about, I was kind of expecting it, and they may be able to quickly answer this. How many cars can fit in that queue? How many cars do they expect? And if, this is what you get when you have a Dunkin' Donuts review. You probably haven't had the pleasure of this in this town, but when you review the drive-through now, everybody knows you got to have room for 12 to 16 cars or you're going to be out in the street. And here on that sheet, It has a queuing area, but we don't know how many cars will stack up. We don't know how many cars will be going through this Christmas light show. And what does that do to the parking area? We've got the same thing on the entrance that you discussed so well on the exit. If the cars are there, people are parked up there, how are they going to get in and out? What's the flow? Are they going to have flaggers up there? Are they going to have lights? Do they have lights that adequately shine up there? Again, I think some of these can be answered pretty well by Keach, but we didn't hear any of it tonight, and I don't think you have heard it or seen it. I think, in summary, I would ask that you deny the 2 waivers and that tonight you make a strong decision that you want to have these traffic studies, traffic impact study done, so that you will feel more comfortable. And you can raise all the questions you want to your consultant, just like you've raised them tonight. And your consultant can answer those for you. So you as a planning board will do your proper job, and you won't end up with a plan that none of us really know what's going to happen out there. Even by the applicant's own statements, it's somewhat of a guess as to whether things like laser tag are going to be a principal event or an accessory or supportive. But somebody ought to be looking at this, because sooner or later you're going to end up with, if it doesn't stop in January, I'd be surprised. I think there'll be some opportunity for events. If these are very successful, which everyone hopes it will be opportunity for spring events. And so when do you draw the line as to what's temporary and not? And I think you draw it today, because we've gone from 22 to 24 nights by agreement and by stipulation to now it's clearly going through January by the plan itself without necessary restriction on some of the things that should be discussed. So that's our concern on parking.
And I have a
Yes.
couple things.
Mhm.
If you,
Yep.
the board remembers probably back when we were here a year and a half ago, where they built the bumper boats and that stuff, they eliminated 28 parking spaces because they had plenty of parking spaces. They didn't need them. They had 20 extra parking spaces back then. So they eliminated those parking spaces to put the bumper boats, the kiddie thing or kiddie go-karts or whatever that was. And that was fine. But now we're going to add 100 and something parking spaces for corporate events when we didn't need them back a year and a half ago to add the things that we've added. So how did that happen? Again, I mean, nobody took an account for how many people were going to show up there. So we're putting all these extra grass parking lots and whatnot so that we can now accommodate what they built before that they told us they didn't need more parking spots for. And the only thing that really being added during the summer, if I understand this correctly, is the laser tag. So I'm not sure how this all plays out. Back a few minutes ago, you did have some concerns about the people coming out of the light show into where they're going to park Christmas trees. Well, again, we're adding 100 and something cars. I don't know how many people that's going to be in each car. I don't know if there's 3 people, 2 people, 5 people, 10 people in a car. But those people still have to walk down the middle of that parking lot to go get an ice cream or to go to the go-karts. They're still walking. So now we're adding more people into an area where cars are driving in and parking. Yeah, we can put a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit. The highway, when you're out on the highway, it says 65. If you're not going 80, people are running you over. So, a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit sign isn't gonna slow anybody down if they want to go fast. I mean, is it gonna help? Yeah, maybe about that much. But there's still gonna be people in the middle of the traffic. It's different. Andy said him and his wife went to, Andy Attorney Coleman in his letter said him and his wife went to IKEA and they walked into the building and they got out. That's great. I agree with that. When we're in a mall, People aren't driving off 3A at 35 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour. They're driving you're in a big parking lot out here. But we don't have 10 kids or you don't have 3 kids all excited to be at Spooky World, enjoying themselves, going to get an ice cream, just play golf, going to get off the bumper boats. I mean, they can run around wherever. And there's people just driving in. There's an easy solution. Put a sidewalk in. Put a sidewalk in on the side where the people against the ride, where the people are going to go. Putting the stone sidewalk on out on 3A or the 3A side of the parking lot. Oh, he's going to walk over there. There's going to be some people that park there. They might walk for a little bit, but we're all nature. We're going to take the shortest route. There's people walking down 3A right now. They're going to say that they're not, but they are. They're parking in the cornfield. Some of them walk from Spooky World back because it's the shortest route, or they've come down. After the last meeting, they added more fencing to try to stop people from doing that. But there's still people doing that. We also had a sidewalk approved that had to be on the lot coming from Colby Road down when the bumper boats got approved. That was part of the approval. That sidewalk, when they built that sidewalk, they never got an easement, so the sidewalk is there. I asked the board to go out and look to see how they left the end of it, and that's why I closed the sidewalk off. I've made them the offer that they can build a sidewalk on my property. I'll give them an easement. They have to build it on the edge of the right-of-way, and they have to build it to a standard that meets ADA. Okay? So they need to do that unless you're going to, that was part of the approval. So if you can take that, if you're going to tell them that they don't have to have that sidewalk anymore, then that's okay. But that was part of the original approval, that they had to have that sidewalk. So again, they should build sidewalks. If they're gonna, if you do allow them to use the parking lot on lot 14, they should have to build a sidewalk along so that everybody has a designated area. So any time of the year that they use it, there's a sidewalk there. The next thing is on lot 14. There is no site plan. They've never got approval on a site plan to park the trailers and things that they're parking out there. There is no site plan. I've never seen one. I don't think this board has ever approved one to have parking trailers out there. They've just done it on their own, which it does require site plan approval for that. The other thing with that lot 14, I'd just like to have them show me on the plan where the cornfield is, because I don't know if there's a cornfield out there. So if they could show us on the plan where the cornfield is.
You're talking across the street from Ron's house, the one that's been there since we moved into Litchfield? The
Well,
one that Charlie's been using since Mel Horn owned the property, that one?
I think I want to see the cornfield
The
where
cornfield, could we please go?
where the trailers are parked that you're
I mean,
going
all
to
right,
use.
so the trailers were here, which we got approved for the last time because you made sure we put them on the plan. Thank you, because that's why it's there. This is the cornfield that's been a cornfield. 30, 40 years Charlie's been using it. So that's the cornfield that we're talking about. So hopefully you understand that's the cornfield. You know you've seen the corn here because it's been there since the day I moved in to Litchfield.
So you're not using any of that?
None of this is being used for parking at all. This is just where we got granted to put our trailers and put some storage because you wanted that on the plan. We put it there. This is the only area that would be used for temporary Spooky World parking, only for the Spooky World time in season. And that's it. That's all that's there. And there will be that stone dust walkway that goes across, which the police department came out, authorized, and said that that's the perfect spot for it to go across the street.
But again, I don't think it's the police department's jurisdiction. The police department can make their recommendation, but it's the board's decision on what happens out there. Same thing with the fire department. When you put notes on the plan or you make conditions on the plan, the police department, and they'll say that the police department's out there and the fire department's out there. They're not at the enforcing an agent. What you put on the plan, the zoning administrator or the planning board are the ones that have to enforce that. I mean, police and fire aren't out there to enforce any of the regulations that we do. So they don't have to. They're not going to do it. They don't have to. That's their job.
Okay.
And the other thing that I would like the board in this whole process to add in that they don't exceed 75 decibels on their property line. That's in accordance with our regulation, with your regulations.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen?
That's it.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other members of the public who wish to comment? Okay. Mr. Attorney Perlman, did you want to say anything in response?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I'm Andy Perlman. Again, where are we? Okay, can you please go to a previous plan? So I want to point to the corporate tents. Okay.
Next one down for the tents.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right. So historically, when there were corporate events and company events, big parties and whatnot, I went to like a beer vendors thing, like a brew pub type thing here some years ago. We were using the lot across the street in the summertime. This wasn't, the lot across the street, lot 18, was not exclusive to Spooky World, like we're proposing for lot 14. So when we lose lot 18, we have to make up for that parking somewhere. And that's why we have the parking on the other side of the mini golf. That's what we're doing there. And we could pave that. Nothing to say we couldn't pave that. You want that paved? You want all that additional impervious area, right? When these guys have a history of knowing how to park people. It's just unnecessary. The comments about the pedestrian safety, we're certainly concerned about pedestrian safety. We'd never not give that any weight. But these guys have been running Mel's since 2006. Dave Melhorn has started Mel's in 1991. We're not aware of any pedestrian automobile incidents of any kind ever. And it makes sense because people go slow in these parking lots. People have kids, they go slow. Not unlike when we all go to shopping malls. And sometimes they're laid out better than others. But we've all walked long distances into a shopping mall, and accidents do happen, but they are very rare. They haven't happened here. The DOT permit, when Attorney Haas spoke about events, it's specifically, the lot 14 is specifically limited to Spooky World. So we have no issue having a police detail out there for the Spooky World events. We have to, according to the DOT permit. Not an issue. Lot 14 will have cars with headlights coming in. I believe there is sufficient screening, natural screening there now, but that's a good comment. We can take a look and confirm. If we need some stockade fencing, we're not opposed to that. Mike and Wayne just installed a bunch of stockade fencing along the big farm field that you'll see out there today behind that row of homes. If we have to do something like that to block some headlights, that's okay. That's not a problem. But again, I think your lot 14 zoning issue has been decided from the history of approvals for lot 18. It's the same issue, same use. It's actually less use with fewer cars, better ownership, and that Mike and Wayne own the lot. So I think that issue is behind us. And the, we heard a lot about there's no definition of the uses. Again, Mr. Charbon is correct. The only additional use we're proposing during the Mel season is the laser tag. Thank you. And again, we see that as an additional amenity. We can give you some more information on that, and we will. And we can come back to you next time as we were scheduled to. And specifically because we know how many laser tag units will be purchased by Mel's for their guests. So if you take those number of units being the gun and the vest, right, we can tell you how many there are. So there will be a max use at any one time. Not that we expect the max use to be used at any one time, but we can let you know that. And I think, we have added sidewalks. The stone dust sidewalk, where it exists today, was approved by this board, was laid out. There was no objection from our neighbors as it runs along the kind of parallels the Charles Bancroft Highway. We're going to continue to use that. And again, people will be walking in the parking lot. We can't deny that. We've all done it. Going to Mel's or going to Shorty's when it was Shorty's so many years ago. So it's just what we do. And there's been no incidents. We don't see any need to overdo this plan. So I have notes that I can't read. Oh, we can. Attorney Hollis is right. We could probably tell you the number of queued vehicles in the 3 lanes. That's not hard to do. Each car is 20 feet. You can do the math.
Yeah. So I took a look at it. Definitely have an accurate vehicle count of how many could fit through the queuing line. It's definitely a note we can add. The way I've looked at it, there's approximately 150 cars could be queued in this line and in the parking lot before it. And actually 150 cars could go through the hayride itself. But that's if each car is stacked back to back. So we've always looked at it as the site is able to queue essentially 200 vehicles. That's 100 less than the 300 that possibly could be shown. So we feel that's a safe, including a factor of safety, that's a safe bet, safe requirement. And I don't know if those guys expect to see that many vehicles in a winter light show. I don't know, probably not ever, but
there are details in there that we're going to get into that next time, because we're going to tell you more about the light show, what it's based on. They're timed entries. Cars are separated by so many seconds. It's tuned into your radio. So there's the logistical details, the mechanical details we're going to get into when we get into the features what we're adding to the park. But we believe we've addressed the parking, and you could study this to death, for the next couple of years, and you'd end up in the same place, as we have today.
And one more thing, as far as the issues with the lighting, we've included a pretty comprehensive lighting plan for the entire site here, where all the temporary lights are being replaced or whatever the case may be. 11, 12, 13, and 14 are the lighting plans for the entirety of the site. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We show foot candle levels. We show the types of luminaires, wall mounts, area lights, parking lot lighting. So
there you go.
I think that speaks for itself. Yep. No bleed over on abutting properties.
These are temporary. On this lot, that's for lot 14. Those are temporary, correct?
Yes.
That's
Okay.
proposed. This is 2 right there.
Yes, correct.
But the other lights on the preceding sheets were temporary, and now they're going to be permanent.
Back on the lot 14, how many cars do you expect to put into that lot?
150.
150 into that lot.
Yes. at maximum.
And any idea about how many corporate events you think you're going to have in a year? Just
This
say
year,
8 to 12, or-
we did for corporate events, we probably did about maybe corporate events 25 to 30, and we kept them all within our lot. This entire season, we had overflow our parking lot with the new bumper boats, with the new kitty land and all. But we're just trying to be smart. We're trying to just get ahead of the curve. Nobody knows 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, if more people move into Litchfield, if people want to move up this way from Massachusetts. We're just trying to prepare for the future. Not once this year did we overflow our parking lot. All of the cars, with the additions that we made, fit inside of our parking lot without a problem. We're just trying to make ourselves prepared for anything that could happen in the future. We want to be smart. We want to plan for the future. That's why we're doing this.
It's not quite right.
It's not quite right.
They parked them all the way around the Laserplex building at least once this year.
Well,
They did. They did.
they did our part once, we had it roped off.
They parked at least once.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Anything else, Attorney Plum?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, unless we had questions from the board, but thank you very much.
Yeah. Does the board have any questions, further questions of the applicant?
You were saying that when you get the queue for the holiday light show, you're saying the queue's gonna start here, right?
Yes.
You're saying between where they enter the light show, you're gonna be able to fit 150 to 200 cars?
That would be 150. That's if each one is packed bumper to bumper. So realistically, like I said, in conjunction with the rest of the light show, probably 200 cars on site. I can get you an actual count for within that queuing line if that's something you're interested in.
And at that point in time, are you going to have cars also be parking in this parking area?
No.
So that'll just be closed off to the flow.
Yes.
Straight flow. As
Yep.
cars pull up to the front of the Christmas tree show, they'll be allowed into the line. So it's a constant flow. Cars aren't sitting, the cars will constantly be moving. If one of those lines fills up, then you start to fill the second line. So as that first line clears, the second line would go. So now you have one open line. And then when the second line goes, the third one would fill. Now you have two open lines. So now you'd be parking row number one again, or queuing row number one, row number three. So you constantly have 1 to 2 rows that are always going to be open throughout the night as people come in. Hopefully, we'll never have a night that they'll all be open. We'll at least have some people in there. And of course, Mel's is not open, Mel's is closed. So it's just the constant turn, as people go through the Christmas show.
Do you have any idea of what type of turnover hour over hour you would have of cars? Because if you're saying you're turning over
Right now, we're
100,
talking 15 seconds. We would gap cars 15 seconds between each other.
Yeah.
If it happens to be like a busy Saturday, we go to 10 seconds. But you want to gap them up because you don't want other cars interrupting other cars or bothering others. So you want them to go through and just be looking at, the magic as they go through it. You don't want to be spoiled by other vehicles.
so I guess my question would be, if those cars are flowing through and they're kind of buying trees, like you're hoping they're going to be buying trees, going through every 10 seconds, where are you going to park everybody after they come out of the show to pick up the trees if you're not having this parking available and this area here is going to be blocked off for the traffic? Where are you going to put everybody?
Somebody else in town who has done Christmas, who we talked to, he says that he gets a ton of his business during the AM. This is only a nighttime show. This is not a daytime show. So the majority of your Christmas tree buying is done during the day. It's sparse during the evening. And I think with your great idea, which I apologize, we didn't come up with it before, by closing off half of all the spots on that side, it will still give the few people who want to pull in and maybe get a tree the opportunity to do that. But from what we understand and from what we've talked to other people in the industry, it's a two different business. It's just going to be there in case somebody wants to grab a tree in the evening. But a lot of people grab their trees during the day so they can see them, hold them up, spin them around. Where's the gap? Where's the hole? I want to make sure it looks perfect.
Do you have any questions?
I'm sorry, I didn't check it before, but were there lights for Christmas tree sales on the plan? I didn't specifically look, but
I believe. Let's see.
I think if you scroll the other way down.
I don't know if there were lights in that area. I mean, there's most of the improvements around. If you scroll down a little bit, if you go to page 14J, that would be much appreciated. That's a better view. Most of these are replacing the existing lights and putting some new fixtures on them. Oh, up one more, please. Yeah, there we go. Actually, no. Sheet 14. There we go.
Got that.
Yep, that's good. So there's a wall-mounted light on the arcade building right there that kind of shines towards the Christmas tree area. They're talking about putting fire pits throughout there, just so people can kind of sit around, have some hot chocolate, and look at trees. Those will probably provide a little bit of light. I don't know. would you
We'll
guys
also
need-
have like the low-level lights, just string Christmas lights in that area, which will go up for Christmas, and then they'll come down after Christmas. Just to make it look more festive in that area.
But we could add a temporary light if it's a concern.
Yeah.
I guess it's the pedestrian traffic that we're really looking at for lighting, but yeah, I understand there's a balance between having it be festive and not be blinding at the same time. So going back to about potentially putting a sidewalk in on the same side as the go-karts. There's only, 2 or 3 spaces that rock wall sticks out. If we're adding all of these parking spaces, is there any reason why we can't lose those 2 or 3 spaces to make room for a sidewalk? Because I know it's like gravel and bushes most of the way. And then there's one spot where there's actual boulders.
When I think a little past that, you've got the mini golf course with that little river that's right there, and cars are parked right up against it.
Is there more than that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it right here on Google Earth, and I mean,
Oh, that's
there's not much room. I don't know what you would need for ADA compliance width-wise, but you run out of space fairly quickly in there.
The easy solution is slide the parking lot close to the gate, take out the stone dust parking walkway, slide the parking lot over and build a sidewalk. Really,
Well, that's easy, but very expensive. Now you're reconfiguring the entire parking lot.
Are you going to be doing the Christmas trees under where the corporate tents were during the summer, or are you coming closer towards that entrance right there where it kind of narrows?
It won't go to the entrance. It's, the little fenced in area, like the little
Yes.
corral area, it's
Yes.
just staying in the corral area. So it doesn't go outside that.
To answer your question, we could look at that. I can't promise we would have any, we could squeeze a sidewalk in there, but we could certainly look at it. You could, in theory, you could cut back some of the bushes, all right, and maybe squeeze in a small sidewalk in there, but
Maybe it's not.
it may not work.
It might not need to be an actual sidewalk even, but just space to walk. Just as a patron, it is, you're difficult if you try to cross, or is it a designated crossing area or a stop sign coming in and turning right into that lot, something to, I guess traffic is slow already, but yeah, just to make it that much more
You also have to look
awareness,
at your
'cause
aisle
there's-
width, because there's a lot there. You have some significant aisle width in some of that area.
Mhm. Yeah, there's just any kind of designation on trying to keep people walking in one in one space instead of all over the aisleway.
Okay, we can look at that.
I had a couple questions about the corporate overflow parking. That you have a specific note that says it's only used for corporate events, the grass lot. Okay.
Correct.
So that's taken care of on the plan. When the restaurant holds events, are you counting that? Are you including that in your corporate events?
They wouldn't be parking back there because that would be the only spot that they would be having an event. So if they were having an event out back, obviously nobody can park out back. They wouldn't be allowed to park out back.
Okay.
Because the restaurant, that one event that they did, they had out back, that they came to town and they asked to do the concert back there. So that particular area, the way I look at it, for that particular show wouldn't be able to get used. They would have to come before the board and they would have to explain how they were going to be able to use that area. But for our meetings and what we're doing, it's only used for just our corporate events. That's all that's being used for, is when we have a company or a school group or a camp group that comes out. That's the only time that would get used.
But so for clarification, the corporate overflow parking would be exclusively for Mel's Funway events, not,
Correct.
it wouldn't be able to be transferable to Day of the
It's
Dead.
only our event for only our corporate school groups, camp groups.
Would we have to have something like that in writing? I mean, would that?
That could certainly be clarified in the written narrative and potentially in the note on the plan as well.
Yeah.
I think it does need to be addressed. Something like if the restaurant wants to hold an event,
They'd have to
what are
come
the
up
steps that they
Sure.
need to take?
The outdoor laser tag, new concept to me. Usually it's indoors because it's dark and it's laser tag. So is that covered? Is there any roof for that? Is it wide open, almost like a
It's just
paintball
open.
setup?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
It's for the kids again, and birthdays, parties for the kids who
Yeah.
enjoy it. It's like cops and robbers when we were kids. They wear little vests, and it's just a little laser that hits the vest vibrates, and then your gun stops for 10 seconds. You're out of the game, and then you go back in and run around and play again.
What's the surface going to be like for that? Is it going to be just grass, field? Is it going to be stone dust? Is it going to be?
They're going to be going throughout the hayride area, so it'll be on the gravel path there, through the woods, whatever the woods cover is throughout there.
The dogs can do it as well. You know, so they can, really, because it's
Yeah.
really one of the factors is
Sure.
team building for the people who are already coming to the corporate events. They
Yeah.
constantly ask, what do you have? What do you have for team building? Okay, we can go car, no the bungalows. What can we do as a team? That's one of the main factors.
Are there any clear boundaries for the laser tag?
They will-
We're getting ahead of ourselves. So
Yeah.
they're get-
We
so
need to
they're going
focus on
to,
the
so
parking.
the plan, we'll
Okay,
focus on parking.
gotcha.
Just, if I could just quickly answer that question. Mike and Wayne are going to kind of quadrant off the hayride area, so different groups can use different, it's a big area, so you could have multiple groups using, multiple laser tag groups using different areas within there. So there'll be fencing or whatnot, separating out different areas.
I was only asking just because if you have the overflow parking and depending on what type of season you have, where it's muddy or whatnot, is it gonna eventually, is it gonna, the water gonna drain off into the area where you have the laser tag? Is it gonna affect the parking? You're gonna have vehicles going in and out of there. You're gonna turn that grassy area into a muddy area. And so I was just trying to think of what type of vehicle traffic you might have in an area where you're gonna have kids playing laser tag. Could a car potentially slide into that area? That's all I was just gonna.
Then no one really.
Yeah.
They're not. Okay.
No, there's no cars anywhere in that area. I mean, anybody who drives by knows when it rains, you can see they're the only ones in the park.
Okay.
Most people cancel, leave, corporate events postpone, go to different days,
Okay.
so, yeah, we're not big fans of bad weather.
That's the next one, you bring the big dome over.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
He'll be here by himself for that one.
I do honestly have a question on what traffic will be like on 3A. You have a good winter where snow's piled up and you got traffic. I mean, I've been to some light shows in the past, and you go to some of these towns that have light shows in their towns, and they've got congestion. So who knows? You could fit 200 cars in there, and it's gonna be fine. And you guys could line it up but who knows what's going to happen on 3A, with winter and traffic. If you hear about people that go up to Loudon and they've got the whole racetrack that's packed with cars. You bring something in this area, I don't know what else is around this area for a nice light show. And to be honest, you guys have a great area where you can drive through the woods. So I don't see why this wouldn't attract a huge crowd. Just trying to understand what the actual impact on 3A would be.
Loudon, just as an example, is huge.
Yeah.
It does draw great, but we're nowhere near that size in terms of, it won't draw like Loudon because of its particular, how small it will be, it'll be less than a mile that people go through. I think Loudon is 3 miles, correct me if I'm wrong.
It's also like compared to like Kennedy Lake Park when they do their Spring Fest.
It's a big show.
They bring in 10 to 13,000 people a night. We're doing 2 to 3,000 people. So I mean, when you have a name like that, you go to a name. We understand that.
Does Canopy do a light show?
No,
No.
they will because we're starting it.
Who owns the cornfield? Do you own the cornfield?
Yes.
Okay. Because if we start to talk about traffic, which I don't know if we can today, if we want to decouple it from the actual plan that comes in. That's just, I'd like to see that before I would vote. That's just my opinion. I didn't want you to factor that into how we're doing that as, backup, and all of a sudden it gets sold out. and what do we do? I do think the attorney and Mr. Charbonneau bring up good points. I don't, right now, I'm not going to obviously vote on anything, but I think there's a short term and a long term here. But I think long term, we really do have to look at parking and pedestrian flow. I'm not saying short term, but safety has to be paramount, and, that's another discussion now, but I don't want to drop that. And I also think, I don't have to follow everything by the book. We like to do that. But, another point brought up was about the zoning. If you could get a variance about that off-street parking, that's another thing we'll have a discussion about. But I just want to say for me tonight, I don't know if I could vote on this traffic or pedestrian flow unless I see what the actual plan is going to be. But I don't want to let that drop either, because that is the legal side of it, and we have to protect, security, for the town and for the pedestrians, obviously. And you don't want to have a problem of anybody getting hurt either. So that's where I'm going to stand with that for now.
When you mentioned the fence going up, coming out of lot 14, the cornfield, the houses across from lot 14, are those property owned by you or those private abutters?
Private abutters.
So when we're talking about the lights, people turning left, shining into their, depending on which way the traffic's going, you're going to have a lot of headlights going into. How would you mitigate that? And have everybody talk to you guys about that at all? I mean,
We've talked to them about what we're doing. Nobody's had an issue with us. Ron's come over several times to talk with us.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think you have enough information to consider the waiver with respect to the grass parking. And if the board is leaning toward a traffic study, we would prefer to know that now so we can get that going.
Okay.
Rather than wait another month or two and then say, oh, we want a traffic study, because they take a little bit of time to prepare and present.
Well, I certainly think a lot of good points have been raised, and I think by the board. Given that, we're sort of adding events to the site, and given that these events are sort of the seasonal events, I certainly think I agree with the issue of congestion on 3A. I think that would be an issue. My personal stance. So I think a traffic study may be warranted under those circumstances. I understand that you're not as big a venue as Canopy Lake or the Loudon Speedway. I get that. But even still, as Mel's grows, I think it might be appropriate just to have in place something to deal with the issue of safety. And as Kim mentioned, I think that's key, critical. We are the planning board. We have to deal with safety, health, and welfare. So I think that would be an appropriate. Now, that's my personal take. Now, we have a board here, so I don't know what you guys want to do. So I guess that we'd have to have discussion right now. I mean, what do you want?
I guess in my mind, the difference between starting to do something in the cold weather seasons versus the warm weather seasons is you get icier conditions with the traffic. So the flow is different. You're going to have, different movement with the snow. You don't know what kind of buildup you're going to have. And we could have a winter where you don't have the room to do the 2 lanes for the traffic that you want to be doing through. Even though it's only a mile long, you could have a handful of cars that don't want to go to Loudon. Your light show could be 100 times better than Loudon, and you could draw traffic out of there. People don't want to drive. I've never been to Loudon, but hours away to go to a light show when you come right down here to Litchfield. You're going to have, a lot of people from the community in there. You're going to have outside towns coming here. Just because it's a lot nicer of a setting, driving through the woods with the Christmas light settings. It's almost like driving through a winter village. It's a lot better than going to a racetrack and driving around a racetrack, So I do think you have the ability for a heavy amount of traffic during those few weeks. So I don't think it'd be a bad idea.
Okay.
What's the lead time for a study to happen? And is it expensive?
I mean,
Yeah,
Is it a
it's
hardship?
10 grand. It takes 60 to 90 days.
How much is it? $10,000?
Well, it's going to depend on the scope, obviously. I mean, from our perspective, at least, the most significant thing is getting an understanding of what these numbers really are and what the capacities are, which is what I don't have my head around. And I just also throw out there is the ability to control it. So if indeed they're using, if people are going online and purchasing their tickets, and I'm not sure what the plan is, but presuming that that's the plan, there is the ability to actually put limitations on the number that can be at the site at any one time. If timed ticketed, the board could look at the possibility of imposing some controls. But again, you got to understand what the number is, what the queuing is, how long does it take to get through, and I think we are going to get that information, but we don't have that information now.
I think you're going to be very successful at this.
No, I really do.
I really do.
I really think with the way your trail is set up, it's going to be just like a Christmas village. People are going to come from all over to travel and something like that. And that's why I'm saying, like, when you guys came up with the idea, did you look at comparable venues, and do you have numbers from them that you can provide for us to compare and to look at the numbers? I mean, there's got to be, Santa's Village up in Conway. What do they look like every year? I mean, I know people that are always traveling every year. It's a must for the holiday season. Are you going to be looking at traffic like that?
I can just tell you, we have been up to see some of them, to see different ones, trying to learn about the business ourselves.
Sure.
And, but we don't have privy to any specific numbers yet, because we don't have that type of relationship. Then I won't tell you what they're doing anyway. So we don't have that relationship with anybody to find out specific numbers.
So that's my only question, is that you don't really know what the numbers are going to be. So we could say, well, we're only going to do 150 cars every hour, but I work in Boston, and sometimes we come through and you have a town that does a Christmas event like this, and they've got 500 cars and they just don't know what to do with them. The town is in lockdown, and that's a good thing, because you want the traffic, you want the business. It's going to be a great show, but we want to make sure 3A is not going to be jammed up, because it's a main road through the town. So it's.
Will this traffic study address all 3 seasons? All the quantities of Mel's, then Spooky
Yeah,
World?
in all honesty, I don't know that it needs to address Mel's season, spring and summer. We can discuss that with a traffic engineer. But certainly the Christmas, we can add Spooky World into the mix. It's an unusual traffic study, because typically traffic engineers focus on peak hours, and specifically left turn movements on peak hours. And we don't really have that, but let me make this task easy for you. I suggest that we withdraw the waiver request for the traffic study, but we would still request the waiver for the grass parking. We think that makes sense. And for lot 14 and also the corporate overflow on our main lot, if the board is so inclined.
The only reason I asked that question was if you're going to invest the money, if it could address all 3 seasons, and then you can look 10, 20 years out, and maybe they see something you're not, where they could say they can come up with another 100 spots somewhere or something. That's all the reason I brought that up. I will say you've only had 1 year of summer for bumper boats, so I don't know if you can gauge the traffic. You haven't done this yet, so I don't know if they can gauge the traffic. So that's why I'm saying I don't know if we want to do a short term, maybe, but the traffic study has to be done by next year. I don't know. That's another discussion where I was saying you want to
One
get
of
it
the things
going, but we still want safety. So
One of the things that we certainly could do is meet with the applicants to talk about a potential scope.
Yeah.
what do you mean by
The first step in a traffic study is to define the scope of what you're studying.
Okay.
How far up and down 3A are we looking? What intersections are we looking at? What time periods?
Okay.
We don't need a, 7 to 9 a.m. study.
Right.
Right. Things like that.
Okay.
And we can have that conversation. There are challenges. I mean,
It's a tricky study.
as I think as Andy said, it is. Typically, you are looking at peak hour traffic impacts, which would not be the case here. And the other challenge that you have is, if you're looking at things like standard ITE, traffic generation, it's pretty tricky for some of the uses that we're talking about.
It won't be there.
They're not in the manual, in other words. So finding standards for parking generation for laser tag is not going to be easy to do. So there's going to have to be some thinking around what this scope looks like and kind of how do you define the issues.
Right.
But
we don't want it just to be to pass this board. We want it to be long-term for your strategy
Yeah.
on how you keep building. So, if you, I think you keep morphing there. So that's what I'm saying. If we can look at it as positive, we're not trying to be negative, but I don't know if you just want to focus in on the holiday season. That's going to be your discussion. But if maybe they see something that we're all missing, and they can really come up with a solution for long-term, if you really do grow, that you're covered.
In regards to the waiver for the that you're asking us to pass right now regarding the corporate event, if we pass that waiver tonight, Jay, the discussion around whether Day of the Dead can use that or not wouldn't really apply at that point in time. For us to pass this waiver, would we have to have that verbiage in there before we approve that waiver?
because the waiver is only relevant to paving. So unless you felt you weren't comfortable addressing the paving issue without looking at the usage issue, which is certainly something you could do. I mean, I think if you have concerns about the level of usage, which I'm feeling like that's your concern, then you may want to defer taking action on that waiver request until we've had a conversation around usage, which was really planned for the next meeting on this.
Yeah, I mean, certainly can defer it if you feel that.
I mean, again, I don't know the business. I don't know how many corporate events you have on any given corporate event. Are you bringing in 30 cars, 40 cars? I don't really know. So I can't honestly, in an educational experience, really base an opinion on it. So.
Mike mentioned you had roughly 30 events this past year. We can get numbers on that.
So where are you normally parking them now?
The regular parking lot.
Regular parking lot.
Some are bigger, some are small.
And you ran into this year that you were not having enough room for vehicles, or
What it is with the pandemic, they just didn't come out and have the big corporate events anymore.
Okay.
Those corporate events with 100 people just dissipated. Yeah, well, any small corporate events, 30 people, 40 people. But the big ones, hopefully, this will all be over one day. That's our hope, and we'll be back and have a 100-person corporate event, hopefully. It should be maybe even next year. I think it's finally dissipating. We feel like it's kind of dissipating the fear of COVID.
I mean, I'm not opposed to not being paved. I mean, if you go to the Big E out in Springfield, everywhere you park out there is all just field. You know, it's not paved, it's grass, it's just regular stone and dirt. So I'm not opposed to that. I just I just don't know that area well enough to really.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Morgan Hollis.
Yes,
There
Chair
are,
Hollis.
as Andy knows, sometimes when you're proposing pavement, it may not be necessary. There are alternatives, and that's why I call for it. They can define how many events. For example, you can say if you have more than 30 events, you have to come back to the planning board and discuss the necessary improvements. If you have 30 or less, maybe grass area works. You know, the Big E is great, but it's limited time. Corporate events might be limited. Nobody knows. And I don't think the applicant knows, and I don't think the town knows. But it's one of those solutions that I've seen a lot of planning boards handle. Parking count requires 120 cars, but the reality is maybe only 60 are going to go. So let's show where 60 more could go. If you start using that space, you've got to come back in here and define it better. So that's just one option. That's why I say you don't necessarily have to make that decision tonight. Once you hear about the operations a little more, we certainly don't have a objection. We're not interested in pavement or pavement standards. It's just a little better definition. So it's not 5 years from now when they're very successful, they turn out to use that parking area every day. And they don't need to come back to you because it's designated as corporate overflow. It's just what it is. It's going on every day.
And this is regards to corporate events. So I get it's safe to assume that those are over until next year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we were to defer it to another meeting, it's not going to really affect
It's,
business, right?
yeah, fair enough.
And I'm not saying that I want to push it off, but
Yeah, no,
just to have a better understanding.
In terms of the, when we're talking about the approval of the off-street parking that's permitted, I don't know. I noticed Mr. Blackwell is our building inspector, and are you also the zoning person for the town? And I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here because I'm not an expert on this. What is your take on that, do you think, in terms of zoning, the zoning determination, if you were looking at this?
My determination would be use in that zone.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. So everybody else, Kate, what is your take on this? I know
That was the last concern that I had was we've kind of consistently been trying to have everyone's site plans get buttoned up, and I don't see how we can approve the parking.
in terms of,
we had done it in the past, but if we're going to do it right, it should go to the zoning.
okay.
zoning board.
In terms of the traffic study, I mean, the impact study, do you feel that that's something that should be needed?
It's hard because I don't want to have an impact study just for the sake of it. Because there's not a lot of baselines to go off of. See a compromise being requiring those times tickets and only so many cars at a time through that light. Because like as a business owner, you may want traffic studies, as Kim said, as a baseline, and so you can really get an understanding of your site through the study's eyes. I don't want to say. I just don't want it to be useless. I don't want it to come up with nothing useful. And then if the real problem is we're worried about the congestion from the light show, timing the tickets would relieve that.
Okay.
So I have no decision right now. I'm still thinking about it, I guess.
Ron, what do you think?
There's a lot to digest. And some of the preconceived notions I had have gone the other way during the course of this conversation. And as far as the traffic study goes, I say it's good for the and right for the reasons that were brought up, especially by Kim. And I just have to end it there.
Okay.
Okay. You might have the most knowledge on this, but are there comparable towns that have run into the same type of issue? I mean, the only place I can think of is Canopy. And what would that's Salem, right? What would Salem do in a situation like this? If Canopy were to say they wanted to add a Christmas light festival or holiday light festival, would a town like that come in there and require something like that? I mean, are we off basis on going to Mel's and saying, you know, because we've never had this type of holiday, traffic. So we have nothing to base our decision off of. That's kind of essentially why you do the traffic study, to get a foothold as to what you're going to actually see. I got to assume when they do a traffic study, they're going to look at other venues of comparable interest and look at that. They're going to look at the traffic that's coming in and out, and they're going to put that all together and say, from our expertise, you're going to see this much traffic coming in and out of there, which would give us the baseline as to say, well, maybe that's too much, and we do have to do what Kate suggests and put times, ticket sales in there. Or, you know what, you're not going to see that much traffic. You guys are free to do what you need. I mean, is that, if I'm understanding the basis for the traffic study, it's because nobody really has an idea of what the traffic's going to be like?
I could certainly inquire. I mean, Canopy Lake's been there for well over 100 years. So it's really, really difficult to say how it's comparable or that it's comparable. I think it's going to be challenging to find comparable sites to this that have a similar range of uses and times. But that's not to say we can't, reach out. We can. What you're probably going to find is that you're parsing it into pieces. You're looking at individual activities. Just from my perspective, I kind of come back to, we still haven't had the conversation around the uses. And so I think it would be really, really helpful to have that conversation, to understand what's anticipated. How are these different activities? How do they take place? What's expected? How many people? So I think that's going to be important to have. And then maybe on the basis of that, we can make some determination as to really whether that's sufficient information or we need to do more, and what the concerns really are in terms of numbers.
Okay.
We could also
So-
just limit it to an internal traffic study. And then limit the tickets too, because I don't think all the pedestrian issues have been addressed. And I'm wondering what an outside expert would say about the internal traffic flow, but maybe not the external. I don't know that the traffic count onto 3A, if we're going to have any numbers to go off of.
What we will know, though, is what the capacity of the site is if we understand how long it takes for a vehicle to move through, what the stacking is, and what the timing is. That'll at least get us to understand what capacity is. And then from that, we could, if the board wished to impose limits and a requirement for time taking, then you'd know at least what that number looks like,
Right.
which we just don't know now because we haven't had that
Right.
conversation.
Because how would you be able to set, okay, you can sell 20 tickets every 30 minutes if you don't know that it takes 40 minutes to go through the 1 mile, which it might not. It might take, 10 minutes to go through it. Don't really know what it's going to take unless you guys have that information.
Attorney
We will.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, two things. Let me please withdraw my withdrawal of our traffic study waiver request. And perhaps we just defer the issue for the time being.
Okay.
How's that? And secondly, let me please have Matt Peterson from Keach Nordstrom weigh in a little bit about some traffic concerns, because he's been doing this longer than everyone here, with maybe an exception.
Good evening, Matt Peterson with Keach Nordstrom Associates. I just want to bring to the board's attention here, the traffic report or study isn't really the avenue you can go with this type of facility, because of we're studying times in the mornings 4 to 6 and the evenings 5 to 7. There's no, as Jay was saying, specific data on this type of use. We use the ITs to start looking at left turn lanes, right turn lanes, queues and backups. But there is a combination that we can kind of look at more so internally and how each thing would kind of play together. Like, for example, this Saturday we drop our times back, okay, 4:30. There's nothing else going on besides the light show. So there's not everything's going on together at one point. So there's a way to look at the internal layout and circulation for the light show based on some of the ticketing that we're talking about and some of the things that we will try to find from other facilities that are out there. But we're not going to put a tube out on the road and do typical traffic study counts, because that's not kind of what this is. But internally wise, what each one would bring or how it bring, like we have the Space Center in Hooksett, you guys have seen that. We've got some other places that have these types of uses. And we can put together a traffic memo that will take a look at the pedestrian circulation that you talked about on site here, and that will take a look at the individual uses and how they may add different people to that. And working with staff and Jay and the review engineer to kind of come up with that is not a specific traffic study that meets all the kind of, like I said, left turn decel lanes. Is it a Warren article? Is it that type of stuff? I don't think that's what we're here for. A light show that's happening at 6 o'clock at night on a November 3rd or 4th, is not what you're worried about when you're trafficking your town. You're worried your morning and your evening peaks is going to go. So we can definitely take a look at that internally. Steve Keach, my boss, myself, again, we put together many of these that take a look at the overall site and how it would work, but not necessarily specific traffic report. But it'll be a memo, and it'll kind of take into those considerations. It'll talk about the pedestrian circulation and some of the other things that would be as pieces. So it's not like one all thing how this works, but then you can grow, as you said, in the future. If the light shows very extension, you come back to that and we say, okay, listen, we're going to ticket it for 150 cars. Okay, well, 1 year came up to 250, so now let's take a look. So it would give you a baseline of something that you can look at. If that's something the board thinks would help them make their decisions, that is something we can work with the applicant together in a reasonable manner that I think gets to where you're looking for. So I just kind of want to bring that to your attention. And I think Jay was right on trying to get to that point when he was saying there's not this specific, this is the use, run the number, boom, this is it. It's going to take a little bit of massaging with the owners, with Jay, and our expertise as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're here.
I'm not.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I guess the question is, do we want to have them do a traffic analysis, a memo, or something along those lines that would help us in making our decision, I guess, or approval?
I think it's important to understand what the impact's going to be like with traffic in that area.
Okay. So I guess Attorney Perlman, I mean, you've heard from the board kind of where we're sort of looking.
I understand, and we will get you that traffic memo.
Okay. All right. I think that might be best
Sure.
to do that. With that said, I don't think, I mean, obviously we're not really ready to vote on anything this evening. I think what we might want to do is we're going to have another round of this. I think next time when you return, we're going to talk about the permitted uses and what's going on the sites more specifically, as well as the overall picture. So it may be best to continue it to a date and time certain. In order to do that, I'm going to need a motion to do that. But I think next time when we come back, and then also give an opportunity for you to meet with staff and perhaps to come up with some kind of ideas and so forth with your engineers.
Sure. Yep.
And to work with that and see what you can come up with. So I guess next time we'll look at the other issues regarding the Christmas show and the Spooky World and then so forth, the summer events. So when's our next meeting? Is that?
So if we did it today, our next meeting on the 16th, we were planning as a workshop.
Is a workshop.
Really,
So
it's 2 weeks. So probably it would be December 7th after that.
I guess my question, Attorney Cronin, is when do you think you can have the memo completed, or when do you think you can get everything?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that we stick to December 7th, and we'll go through, if we have the memo, you'll have the memo. We may not have it by then, but we could certainly go through the features of the park that we're proposing, and we perhaps answer a lot of questions that came up tonight.
Okay. All right. So we will reconvene here on December 7th, for the next part of this site plan review. In order to do that, I would need entertain a motion to
I'll make a motion to
continue.
this application to December 7th.
I'll second it.
Okay. I have a motion by Kate, seconded by Ron. Do I have further discussion? I'm just going to add to that. I am going to keep public comment open during this period, so it will remain open just for that purpose. So I have a motion, I have a second. Do I have discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor of reconvening this site plan review to December 7th, 2021 for the planning board, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstained? Motion passes 6-0-0. Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, and we'll see you on the 7th. Thank you.
I believe we're scheduling planning board meetings in December already.
I know.
When did they want to start their show?
Crazy.
When are they starting their show? Is it next year? Okay.
Oh.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I got rid of December. I
All
got
right.
through with
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving, but
Okay. Let's see. Screen. All right, next item on the agenda, which I kind of
got a little nervous
combined,
there.
but it's actually a separate item. I didn't realize. Floodplain ordinance, section 1102.00, permitted uses, and 1103.00, special exceptions.
Okay, what happened was, Jeff is looking at a couple houses that are in the floodplain and they're doing an addition. So we're looking at permitted uses in the floodplain ordinance, and it says any use which is permitted in the underlying zoning district, which does not involve the erection of any new building or structure, that's a permitted use. Otherwise, you go to special exceptions. The zoning board of adjustment may grant special exceptions for the following uses within the special flood hazard area for the erection of new and the enlargement of existing non-residential building, temporary storage of non-hazardous materials, the alteration of surface configuration of the land. And it says nothing about residential uses. But a permitted use but above it says permitted use is any use which is permitted in the underlying zoning district, which would be residential.
So it looks like there was an oversight
Okay.
in failing to address residential.
Oh, in this ordinance,
In
okay.
the special exception criteria.
Okay.
So they will have to go for a variance if they want to continue on now and not wait for town meeting.
All right.
But that's something we could pretty readily address if we want to add it to our next workshop. That'd be a
Sure.
simple fix.
We can do that. Okay.
So you want to put that on the November?
Yeah, so put it for the next meeting. We can discuss it. Okay, thank you. All right, committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Kim, do you have anything?
It's pretty quiet. Board of Selectmen meets on Tuesday, November 8th at 6:30 PM here at the Town Hall. And the next full commissioner meeting for NRPC will be December 15th. It's a Wednesday at 7 p.m. It's not specified yet, but it'll either be at 30 Temple Street in Nashua or at the Nashua City Hall.
The Conservation Commission meets this Thursday. Is it in Town Hall?
Yes.
I thought I saw that in the email. Oh, okay. Well, 6:30, right? Okay, very good. So 6:30 here in Town Hall. The Lower Merrimack Local River Advisory Committee meeting was last week. I did not attend. I was actually in upstate New York, so I wasn't present, but they did have a meeting at City Hall in Nashua. The Capital Improvement Committee was to meet last night, but that got canceled due to a conflict. Troy, I believe, had a conflict or someone, personal reasons. So that is actually going to be moved to December 1st. So that should be the tentative date for the next meeting. I have the approval of the 10/19/2021 minutes. Do you?
Oh, before we finish the.
Oh, yeah, go
committee
ahead.
reports, I just wanted to
Oh, yeah.
mention, actually tonight, the school board was holding a session, like a community input session on the renovating or building of a new elementary school. And I mentioned to them that it was on, same night as planning board. Their next scheduled one is December 7th, which is also same night as planning board. So my question is, so I didn't want to ask them to move this entire, it involves a lot of people thing if the planning board wasn't if no one else from the planning board was planning to attend those. They're also broadcasted on YouTube. So at the very least, I think we should be keeping an eye on those. I'm pretty sure they're planning to come to the board at some point after this. This could be like a year or two down the road after they have like more finalized plans going. But,
So this is for the GMS.
yeah, but the school board is looking for input.
Okay.
So if there's anything that the
Oh,
board
definitely.
has, maybe not next meeting, but maybe they were planning to have 3 community inputs. So we can, maybe at the third one, we can, if it still falls on a planning board meeting, maybe we say we'll designate somebody to go and, to see it. But I just want to make sure everybody was aware.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Makes sense.
We could all tune in remotely.
Right, you could catch up after otherwise. But yeah, the school board is looking for input.
That's good.
From everyone in the community.
Okay, great. Sorry, the approval of the 10/19/2021 minutes. Did anybody have an opportunity to take a look at those? Have any questions or concerns? Pretty good. Jumped out at me. If there's no amendments, I would entertain a motion to approve them.
I'll make a motion to approve them.
All right, I have a motion by Kim. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Kate. Discussion. All those in favor of approval of the October 19, 2021 minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained. Motion passes 6-0-0.
Do you have to abstain?
Oh, I would abstain
Oh,
because
that's
I
right.
haven't seen the minutes. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
You were in the minutes.
2019.
You were in them.
Oh,
you were in there.
yeah.
You've done it before, you can.
Yeah, I mean,
You can still
I think
approve
you're
it.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of just personal preference.
We'll give you the blessing this time. All right. Any other business this evening? Jay, do you have anything?
Just a couple brief items. One, if anybody's interested, there is a virtual public hearing on the state's 10-year transportation plan tomorrow evening at 7. So if you're interested in participating in that, let me know. I'm happy to send you the link. And just wanted to add for our conversation, our workshop next week, although it's tangentially related to zoning, I thought it might be worthwhile to have a conversation about sidewalks in the north end, since it really is related to changes we're looking at in the commercial district potentially, as well as some of the developments that are coming up.
Okay.
So like that.
Is that, when you say sidewalks in the north end, is that as like an impact?
As,
fee
as,
thing or
as
adding-
within the context of our regulations, yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Joan, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
Okay. I have nothing further, so I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 6-0-0. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we will see you next time.